Get ready to question everything you thought you knew about human nature as we dive into the chilling true story of Frances Sessions and her son's tragic fate on May 20, 1946, a day that will leave you wondering, what really happened after she walked out of the house? Let's start with our first entry. On May 20, 1946, Frances Sessions carried her deceased 6-year-old son for half a mile to her father's farmhouse, her face, hands, and clothes completely covered in his blood. The sun was setting, casting an eerie glow over the rural landscape as she walked alone, undetected by anyone. It's hard to imagine the emotional toll this must have taken on Frances, but what's even more astonishing is that after washing her face and hands clean in the bathroom, she vanished without a trace. Now, you might think that's the end of the story, but there's something even more chilling. The local sheriff was called to the scene, and he found no signs of forced entry or struggle at the farmhouse. It was as if Frances had simply walked out of the house, leaving behind her grief-stricken father and the gruesome discovery. But what happened to Frances after that fateful night? Did she continue living in the shadows, haunted by the memories of her son's tragic death? The truth is, we may never know for certain. The case remains unsolved to this day, leaving behind only questions and a sense of unease. And it's this very unease that we'll be exploring further in our next segment. But one thing is clear, Frances Sessions' disappearance on May 20, 1946, was just the beginning of a journey into the heart of terror. The truth behind this is far more sinister than anyone expected. Coming in at second. As we delve into the world of unexplained phenomena on May 20, 1946, Frances Sessions' tragic and haunting story unfolds. It was a day that would forever etch itself in the minds of those who knew her, and leave a trail of unanswered questions. Frances, a devoted mother to her 6-year-old son, had just lost him in a devastating accident. In a state of shock and despair, she carried his lifeless body half a mile to her father's farmhouse, the sight of which would haunt her for eternity. But what happened next is where things take a chilling turn. As Frances washed away the blood from her face and hands, she took a moment to collect herself before stepping out into the world once more. And then she vanished. No one saw her again, leaving behind only whispers of a mother's unending grief and an unsolved mystery that would haunt the small town where it all went down. The question is, what drove Frances Sessions to take such drastic measures? Was she consumed by grief, or was something more sinister at play? The truth remains shrouded in secrecy, leaving us with more questions than answers. And as we dive deeper into these 5 on May 20th, you'll be left wondering if the darkness that took Frances will strike again. And that's when investigators discovered something that changed everything. Coming in at third. On that fateful day, May 20th, 1946, Frances Sessions' world was shattered when her 6-year-old son, Jimmy, took his last breath in her arms. As she held him close, a chill ran down her spine as she realized the horror that had unfolded before her eyes. The blood-soaked clothing and hands were just the beginning of this gruesome tale. With a heavy heart and an overwhelming sense of grief, Frances carried Jimmy's lifeless body for half a mile to her father's farmhouse. As she approached the old homestead, her face, hands, and clothes stained with her son's blood, she was met with an eerie silence. No words were spoken as she entered the house, seeking solace in the bathroom. With tears streaming down her face, Frances washed away the evidence of her devastating loss. But little did anyone know, this moment marked the beginning of a mystery that would haunt the small town for years to come. As Frances emerged from the bathroom, her appearance changed, but her story remained a secret. Or so it seemed. As the sun dipped below the horizon on that dreadful day, Frances walked out of the house, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. And though she was never seen again, whispers began to spread like wildfire. Frances Sessions vanished into thin air, taking with her the truth about Jimmy's death. The truth, much like Frances herself, remains lost in the shadows. Will we ever uncover the secrets that lie beneath? Join us next time as we delve deeper into this chilling mystery. The truth behind this is far more sinister than anyone expected. Coming in at 4th. As we delve deeper into the darkness that lurks in these 5 cases, our minds are forced to confront the unthinkable. Take for instance the case of Frances Sessions. On May 20, 1946, Frances carried her deceased 6-year-old son, Tommy, half a mile to her father's farmhouse. Her face, hands, and clothes were soaked in his blood. The image is almost too grotesque to comprehend. But here's the twist: after washing her face and hands clean in the bathroom, Frances walked out of that very same house, undetected. And she was never seen again. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play, just a complete disappearance into thin air. The question on everyone's mind is, what happened to Frances Sessions? The truth is, we may never know. But one thing is certain: the events that transpired in that farmhouse that day will haunt us forever. And as we continue to unravel the mysteries surrounding these 5 cases, we'll uncover even more chilling tales that will leave you questioning everything. So, what secrets are hiding in the shadows? Tune in next time for part 5 of Why These 5. On May 20, 1946, Frances Sessions carried her deceased 6-year-old son for half a mile to her father's farmhouse, her face, hands, and clothes completely covered with his blood. After washing her face and hands clean in the bathroom, she walked out of the house undetected and was never seen again. Are so terrifying. The truth behind this is far more sinister than anyone expected. And finally, the most disturbing one on our list. This is the case that still keeps investigators up at night. As we've seen so far, May 20, 1946, was a day that would etch itself into the memories of those who lived through it forever. But what happened to Frances Sessions after she walked out of her father's farmhouse? The truth is, no one knows for certain. Theories abound, but one thing is clear: Frances Sessions vanished without a trace. Her family, friends, and even authorities were left with more questions than answers. Was it a case of grief-induced trauma, leading her to abandon her life? Or was something far more sinister at play? The mystery deepened when investigators discovered a cryptic letter on the kitchen table, penned by Frances herself. It read, "They took him from me. Now they'll take everything else. Who or what did she mean by them? Was it the authorities, her own family members, or some other entity entirely? The more questions we try to answer, the more the fog of uncertainty settles in. And then there's the farmhouse itself. It stood vacant for decades, its walls bearing witness to the events that transpired within. Some say that on quiet nights, you can still hear Frances' anguished cries echoing through those halls. Or maybe it's just the wind rustling through the fields. One thing is certain, May 20th, 1946, will forever be etched in our collective psyche as a day of unspeakable horror and unrelenting mystery. The disappearance of Frances Sessions remains one of the most baffling cases in history, leaving us with only one haunting question: what secrets lie buried beneath those fields, waiting to be uncovered? Looking back at all these cases, a pattern emerges. Whether it's the unexplained circumstances, the lack of evidence, or the haunting questions left behind, each one reminds us that we live in a world full of mysteries. Some may eventually be solved. Others will remain in the shadows forever, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover the truth. So what have we learned from these 5 disturbing cases? That the world is far stranger and more dangerous than we'd like to believe. That some doors, once opened, can never be closed. These stories remind us that not everything has an explanation, and sometimes the scariest thing is not knowing. If you want to see more mysteries like these, make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comments which one disturbed you the most. I'll see you in the next one.